Welcome to Echoes of Crime.
Today we're diving deep into a case that really highlights how circumstantial evidence can sometimes lead justice completely astray.
It's a story that starts in a quiet corner of Kentucky, involves a strange premonition, and ends with, well, a pretty shocking twist years down the line. We're looking at police reports, court documents, the whole file.
Right. We're setting the scene back in 1998. We're east of Louisville, Kentucky. Think rolling green hills, really small communities, like Shelbyville, maybe 1,500, 2,000 people tops back then.
Yeah, the kind of place where everybody knows your name, knows your family. That small town vibe is key here.
Definitely. And that sense of community, that closeness, it usually means peace, but it can also, amplify suspicion when something goes wrong.
And something went very wrong in late October 1998. The whole area was shaken when a local guy just vanished.
This was Kyle Breeden, 38 years old, a local plumber. The records say he was pretty well-built, came from a good family.
And apparently everyone knew him as Deanie. They called him that because he was a bit of a character, always joking around, a real local figure.
Exactly. So when someone like Deanie goes missing in a town that small, it's not just a missing person case. It's a crisis for the whole town.
Everyone got involved, right? The whole town of Shelbyville turned out for the search.
Oh, absolutely. They searched for 10 solid days, looking everywhere. It wasn't just, people walking fields. It was this huge emotional community effort.
But that search effort took a really strange turn, didn't it? This is where the premonition comes in.
Yeah, this is pretty unusual. There's a local woman involved in the search, Susan King. She knew Kyle. And she was praying really hard, asking for some kind of sign, where could he be?
And she claims she got one. A vision.
A mental image, she called it. She described seeing muddy water that was rushing by and weeds sticking up out of it. Very specific.
Wow. So based on this feeling, this image...
She told the searchers, look, you need to check the rivers, the creeks, any body of water around here. She felt really strongly about it. Later on, she'd say she deeply regretted ever mentioning it.
I can imagine why. Because what happened next?
Well, just a few days after she shared that vision, a fisherman near the Gratz River Bridge on the Kentucky River, he found a body.
Found Kyle Breeden.
Yes. Pulled from the water. And the scene itself, it immediately told investigators this wasn't an accident. It looked like he'd been thrown right off the bridge.
Thrown off the bridge. So deliberate disposal. What did they find initially?
He was shirtless, just wearing blue jeans and white sneakers. But the really crucial thing, the detail that screamed foul play.
What was it?
A cord wrapped around his legs, like a guitar cable or maybe a coaxial cable. And it wasn't just tied, it was tangled up with a heavy brick.
A brick, so used as a weight.
Exactly. A clear, calculated effort to make sure that body stayed submerged, stayed hidden. Whoever did this didn't want him found. Ever.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it? It's not just killing someone. It's trying to erase them completely. So the Kentucky State Police step in.
Right. And with the body recovered from the river, the autopsy becomes critical. They need answers the water might have washed away.
And the autopsy? It confirmed the worst fears, I assume.
Absolutely. The findings were stark. Kyle Breeden hadn't drowned. He'd been shot.
Shot? Where?
2 bullet wounds to the head. And crucially, they were non-exiting wounds, meaning the bullets were still lodged inside.
Okay, so they could recover the projectiles. What kind were they?
They identified them as 2.22 Magnum bullets. And there was also cocaine found in his system, which adds another layer, maybe suggesting a possible connection to drugs.
.22 Magnum. Now, for people listening, that's not your standard .22, is it?
No, not at all. A .22 Magnum, WMR. It's a significantly more powerful round than, say, a .22 long rifle. Higher velocity, more impact. Often used in rifles or specific handguns, it's not just a small plinking round. This suggests a more serious weapon was involved.
Okay, so 2.22 Magnum rounds to the head. Anything else from the autopsy stand out?
Yes, something really specific and quite telling. Around the billets, still embedded in the skull tissue, investigators found this fibrous material.
Fibers? Like from clothing?
Exactly what they thought. The interpretation was that something, maybe a pillow, a thick blanket, even clothing, was deliberately placed between the gun's muzzle and Kyle's head when it was fired.
Why would someone do that?
Well, it suggests a couple things.
Yeah.
Maybe an attempt to muffle the sound, like a makeshift silencer, or maybe just closeness. An execution-style killing, where the barrel was pressed right up against something covering the head.
Which drives the fabric into the wound. Chilling.
It told investigators this wasn't some random encounter or a fight that escalated. This looked planned, calculated.
Okay, so they know how he died, roughly, but who did it? That required figuring out his last movements, right? And that was tough.
Incredibly tough. Kyle, or Deanie, didn't have a set 9 to 5. As a plumber, his schedule was flexible, and according to the files, he had this revolving circle of friends. Pinning down exactly where he was and who he was with, it took investigators almost a full year.
A year just to build a timeline. Wow. What did they manage to piece together?
Two key things surfaced. Earlier on the day he disappeared, Kyle cashed a check for $250 at a local check cashing place. That's a concrete financial marker.
Okay, so he had some cash on him. What else?
He was seen in a silver car. But here's the problem. Kyle didn't own a car. So who owned the silver car? Who was driving him around? That became a huge question mark right from the start.
A major lead, but a dead end if they couldn't connect the car to someone. Did anything else point them in a specific direction?
Yes, phone records. That's often where investigators turn. And the records provided a very direct, very potent lead.
Who was the last person he called?
The last person Kyle Breeden spoke to the night before he vanished was Susan King, the same woman who had the premonition.
Susan King, the ex-girlfriend with the vision about the river. That puts her right back in the center of things.
Absolutely. Once that phone record came up, the investigation pivoted hard towards her. In cases like this, the ex-partner is almost always looked at closely.
But this wasn't just any breakup, was it? Their history was complicated.
Extremely complicated. The records describe their relationship, which had recently ended after about 2 years, as volatile. And that's putting it mildly.
How volatile?
Volatile enough that Susan King had an active restraining order against Kyle Breeden at the very moment he disappeared. That piece of paper tells you there was a documented history of serious conflict, maybe even violence.
Okay, so that's motive, potentially. What else put Susan under suspicion back in '98?
Well, there were 3 main things that made her the prime suspect early on. First, obviously, the volatile relationship and that restraining order. Huge red flags.
Makes sense.
Her alibi, or lack thereof. She couldn't provide a solid, verifiable account for all of her time during the critical window when Kyle likely went missing and was killed. Gaps in an alibi always raise suspicion.
Right. And the third thing, this one sounds like it came from the town grapevine.
It absolutely did. A rumor started circulating in Shelbyville. People were saying Susan had bullet holes in her kitchen floor. 2 of them.
Bullet holes in her kitchen.
Yeah. And not just that, but the rumor included that she was trying to hide them, supposedly by moving a chair or furniture over that spot.
Okay, in a murder case involving gunshots, finding unexplained bullet holes in your prime suspect's home, that's pretty damning circumstantial evidence.
It's huge. So naturally, detectives had to follow up on that. About a year after the murder, in 1999, they went to Susan's house specifically to talk about this.
How did that interview go? Did they ask about the premonition first?
They did touch on that, her convenient insight about the river. Susan stuck to her story. She said she prayed, and God gave her the image. Simple as that, in her view.
But the real focus was the kitchen floor, right?
Absolutely. They asked her directly about the rumored bullet holes. And Susan, well, she didn't deny it. She admitted, yes, there were holes. She even offered to show them.
Really? She just admitted it. Did she explain why there were bullet holes in her floor?
She did. She gave them a very specific story. She claimed some drunk biker guy, someone she only knew as Bo, and had only met once before, showed up at her house.
Oh, okay.
She said he started getting aggressive, tried to touch her inappropriately, wouldn't leave when she told him to. So feeling threatened,
She grabbed her gun?
her .22 caliber handgun, yes. She says she fired it into the ceiling, not at him, but to scare him off. According to her, it worked. He left. That was her explanation for the holes they'd heard about.
Firing into the ceiling? But the rumor was holes in the floor? Or maybe the bullets went through the ceiling and into the floor above. Or perhaps she misspoke, or the rumor was slightly off.
That detail isn't perfectly clear in the initial report summary, whether ceiling or floor was a primary impact. But the key point was she acknowledged firing her .22 inside the house in a confrontation, providing a non-murder explanation for some bullet damage.
Okay, so she offers an explanation. Did the police buy it? Did they want to look closer?
They definitely wanted to look closer. They asked for permission to actually search under the floorboards, maybe retrieve the bullet fragments from her Bo story.
And what did she say to that?
That's where her cooperation stopped. She called her lawyer, and on their advice, she invoked her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, refused the search.
Cooperating up to a point, then stopping. That can look suspicious, too.
It can. And apparently, she didn't just clam up. The records note she told the police something like, "You're wasting your time with me. The real killer is out there getting away with it."
So defiance mixed with the refusal. Still, despite all this, the bad relationship, the restraining order, the lack of a solid alibi, the bullet hole she admitted to but wouldn't let them inspect further, there was one massive problem with the theory that Susan killed Kyle.
A huge problem. The sheer physical logistics of it all.
Let's talk about Susan King's physical condition. This is crucial.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Susan wasn't just a small woman. She weighed, according to reports, only about 98 pounds. But more significantly, she was disabled.
How so?
She had lost her leg. Back in 1993, she was in a very serious car accident, developed gangrene, and her leg had to be amputated.
So we're talking about a 98-pound woman with one leg.
Yes. And the theory required investigators to believe that this woman somehow overpowered Kyle Breeden, a nearly 200-pound man.
Shot him twice in the head.
Then managed to wrap his body, tie that heavy brick to his legs with the cord.
Load him into the trunk of a car, which, remember, we don't even know whose car yet.
Drive him likely a considerable distance to the Gratz River Bridge.
And then, this is the part I just can't picture, somehow hoist that weighted 200-pound body up and over the bridge, railing into the river below single-handedly.
It just seemed, well, the word used in one report by an investigator at the time was improbable, maybe even impossible.
It sounds next to impossible without help. Did they suspect an accomplice back then?
The idea must have been floated, but there was zero evidence pointing to anyone else helping her. No witnesses, no confessions, nothing. The physical mismatch was such a huge hurdle.
So huge that it basically stopped the investigation in its tracks.
Essentially, yes. That physical improbability combined with her invoking the fifth kind of created a stalemate. They had suspicion, but they couldn't realistically bridge that gap of how she could have possibly done the disposal.
And because of that, the case just died.
It went cold. Officially closed. No arrests made. Kyle Breeden's murder remained unsolved. And Susan King. She was left living in that small town under this dark cloud of suspicion for years.
Imagine living like that. She mentioned later getting dirty looks at church. The whispers must have been constant.
For 7 years, that was the status quo. Silence. Until May 2006.
What happened in 2006?
A detective with the Kentucky State Police, Todd Harwood, decided to take a fresh look at the Breeden cold case. Pulled the old files off the shelf.
And who's the first person you look at when you reopen a case like this?
Susan King. Naturally. All that circumstantial evidence from '98 still pointed towards her, even with the physical question marks.
So, Detective Harwood goes to see Susan. How did she react this time?
Apparently, she was cooperative again. Welcomed him in, answered the same old questions she had faced almost a decade earlier. She probably thought it was just procedure.
But Harwood had a specific goal, didn't he? He wanted to see those bullet holes.
Exactly. He asked to examine the kitchen floor himself, and this is where the case takes a sharp, critical turn.
What did Harwood find?
He looked closely at the floorboards, and he compared what he was seeing to the original 1998 police report, which, remember, mentioned the rumor of 2 holes, the ones Susan explained away with the biker Bo story. Detective Harwood counted 4 distinct bullet holes in the floor. Not 2, 4.
4 holes. That's double what was initially reported or discussed. How did Susan explain the extra 2?
She stuck to her original Bo the biker story. But when Harwood pressed her on exactly how many shots she fired that day, she got vague. Said she couldn't really remember the exact number.
That sounds less convincing than her original certainty about the incident.
Right. And she tried to kind of normalize it, saying things like, oh, you know, people shoot guns around here all the time, even mentioning other supposed bullet holes in an old fridge she had, trying to downplay the significance of 4 holes in her kitchen floor.
But those 2 extra unexplained holes were exactly what Harwood needed, weren't they?
Precisely. That discrepancy gave him probable cause.
Mm-hmm.
He went and got a search warrant for Susan's house.
And this time, they could do more than just look. What did the search uncover?
They physically removed that section of the kitchen flooring, dug into the wood around those holes, and in one of them, one of the new holes not accounted for by her story, they found it.
Found what?
A .22 caliber bullet fragment lodged right there in the wood.
Okay, physical evidence. A bullet fragment from the floor of the prime suspect who owned a .22. That seems pretty significant.
Very significant. And there was more. The lab didn't just analyze the fragment. They tested the wood surrounding the impact sites.
Yeah.
They found male human DNA in the wood.
Male DNA in the bullet holes.
Near them, yes.
Yeah.
In the wood itself. Now, they couldn't get a specific profile, couldn't match it directly to Kyle Breeden or anyone else, just male human DNA.
But still, Male DNA near bullet impacts in the home of a female suspect whose male ex-boyfriend was murdered with a .22. Circumstantially, that looks really bad for
It looks
Susan.
incredibly damning. Even without a direct DNA match to Kyle, the presence of any male DNA right there was powerful ammunition for the prosecution.
So now Harwood has 4 holes, a .22 fragment from one of them, and male DNA. What's the next step?
He takes this new evidence to a grand jury in April 2007. He lays out the state's theory of the crime.
And what was that theory based on this new evidence?
The theory was that Susan King killed Kyle Breton inside her residence. The potential motive floated was a small debt, maybe around $300, that Kyle was trying to get back from her. Apparently, he'd even written it down on a list.
So the state argues she killed him in her kitchen over $300. How did Harwood explain the mechanics of it to the grand jury?
He emphasized that Susan was known to be proficient with a .22 handgun. His hypothesis connected all the dots. Susan fired 6 shots total.
6 shots. Where did the other 2 go?
2 went into Kyle's head, the fatal shots. The other 4 went into the kitchen floor, matching the 4 holes Harwood found. Misses, perhaps, or maybe shots that passed through Kyle first.
And the fragment they found?
Harwood suggested that fragment could have been from a bullet that maybe grazed Kyle before lodging in the floorboards. It tied the floor evidence directly to the victim in theory.
Okay, so that's the shooting scenario. But what about the biggest hurdle? The disposal. How did Harwood explain that to the grand jury? Did he mention the leg?
This is where it gets deeply problematic. He presented a scenario where Susan, quote, scooted and drugged Kyle's nearly 200-pound body out of the house.
Scooted and drugged.
Yeah. Somehow got him into a car trunk, drove to the Gratz Bridge, tied the brick and cord around him, and then managed to lift him over the railing.
It still sounds physically impossible for a 98-pound woman with one leg. Did he address her disability to the grand jury?
And this is the first critical omission we need to talk about. According to the case review documents, Detective Harwood did not inform the grand jury that Susan King had only one leg.
He didn't tell them. He left out the single most significant piece of exculpatory physical evidence.
He omitted her disability from his testimony. By doing that, he made the physically improbable scooted and drugged scenario sound perhaps merely difficult rather than near impossible.
That feels intentionally misleading. Was that the only crucial piece of information left out?
No. There was another, equally significant omission related to the physical evidence itself. The ballistics.
What about the ballistics? They found a .22 fragment in the floor, and Kyle was killed with .22 bullets. Seems consistent.
But remember our earlier discussion. Kyle was killed with .22 Magnum rounds, high velocity.
Right. And the fragment from Susan's floor?
Forensic analysis determined that the fragment recovered from the floor was from a .22 long cartridge, not Magnum.
Wait, .22 long and .22 Magnum. They're different types of ammunition, aren't they? Even if they're both .22 caliber.
Completely different. Different casing length, different pressures, different ballistics. They are fundamentally not compatible in the way this theory requires. A gun chambered for .22 Magnum generally cannot safely fire a .22 long, and vice versa is also problematic or impossible depending on the firearm. More importantly, the bullets are distinct.
So the bullet fragment found at the supposed crime scene did not match the type of bullets used in the actual murder.
Correct. The report explicitly stated the floor fragment and the bullets from Kyle's body were not consistent.
Did Detective Harwood know this when he testified to the grand jury?
The records indicate yes, that ballistic inconsistency was known at the time of his testimony.
So he presented the floor fragment as evidence linking Susan's kitchen to the murder, while knowing it didn't actually match the murder weapon's ammunition type. And he didn't mention her missing leg.
Those two crucial facts, the ballistic mismatch and the physical disability, were omitted from the grand jury presentation.
Wow, that changes the entire picture. Without that information, the remaining circumstantial evidence, the bad relationship, the DNA, the 4 holes now must have seemed overwhelming.
It certainly seemed so to the grand jury. Despite Susan's husband reportedly calling the state's theory the dumbest thing he'd ever heard, the indictment came back. Murder.
And Susan was arrested?
Arrested and held without bond for 17 months. Facing a potential capital murder trial, the death penalty was on the table.
17 months in jail, knowing you're innocent, facing death. The pressure must have been immense.
Unimaginable. And that pressure led her to make a decision that many innocent people feel forced into.
What did she do?
She took an Alford plea.
Can you explain what that means for anyone listening who might not know?
Yeah, an Alford plea is a strange beast in the legal world. It means you plead guilty to a lesser charge, in her case, second-degree manslaughter. but you do not actually admit guilt. You maintain your innocence.
So you plead guilty while saying you didn't do it. Why would anyone do that?
You do it because you believe the evidence against you, even if flawed or circumstantial, is so strong that a jury is likely to convict you of the original, more serious charge anyway. It's a calculated risk to avoid a potentially much harsher sentence, like death or life without parole.
So she took the plea out of fear of being wrongly convicted of murder at trial.
Exactly. Her lawyer likely advised her that given the evidence presented, minus the omitted facts, a jury conviction was a real danger. The plea offered a guaranteed sentence 10 years for manslaughter with a possibility of parole, instead of risky execution or life in prison.
So in October 2008, 10 years after Kyle's murder,
Susan Jean King was sentenced to 10 years. She apparently regretted the plea almost immediately, but the deal was done. She was now, legally, a convicted killer.
an innocent woman convicted based on omitted evidence and a physically improbable scenario. It's heartbreaking.
And she went to prison. She served 4 years of that sentence, 4 years, locked away for a crime she insisted she didn't commit.
Until something completely unexpected happened in a different case entirely.
Right. Fast forward to May 2012. We're in Louisville now. Detective Barrett Morgan is interviewing a guy named Richard Gerald.
Who was Richard Gerald?
He was 34 at the time, and he'd actually turned himself in after being involved in some other unrelated shooting incident.
Okay, so he's already in trouble.
Big trouble, facing serious prison time. And the detective described Gerald as, well, very intelligent, maybe arrogant. Gerald apparently thought he was smarter than any cop.
And he wanted to make a deal.
Exactly. He saw an opportunity. He told Detective Morgan he had information about other crimes, specifically murders he'd committed in the Louisville area.
What was he hoping to get in return for confessing to murders?
He wanted help for his brother. His brother had been caught up in a federal drug trafficking case, moving drugs from Texas. Gerald figured information on his own murders was a valuable bargaining chip.
So, in the middle of trying to cut this deal, what did he say?
He confessed to killing Kyle Breeden. He initially misremembered the first name, calling him Cal Breeden, but the details he provided, they lined up perfectly with the 1998 cold case. Frighteningly so.
What details did he give? Did he mention a motive?
His motive was chillingly simple. He said he knew Kyle through the drug scene mentioning dope and crack, and he killed him because he just wanted to know how it felt to kill someone.
I need to know how it felt, no other reason.
That's what he claimed. A completely senseless, detached motive. And then he started laying out the timeline, the actions.
Did his story match the known facts, like the check cashing?
Perfectly. Gerald said he picked Kyle up that day. He drove him to the check cashing place where Kyle got out around $200. He confirmed he was the driver of that mysterious silver car from the initial investigation.
Wow. Okay. What about the murder itself? The .22 Magnum? The fibers?
He addressed that too. He said he shot Kyle in the head with a .22, and then he explained the fibers. He said he used the sleeve of his own jacket, pulled over the muzzle, as a kind of makeshift silencer or cover when he fired.
That explains the fibrous material perfectly. That detail was never really accounted for in the case against Susan.
Never. Gerald then said he shot Kyle a second time in the back of the head, again matching the autopsy.
And the disposal, the river, the bridge, the cord, the brick.
He described wrestling the body into the trunk of his car, tying him up with guitar cords and bricks, specifically mentioning those items, driving a long time until he got to the Gratz Bridge, the exact location where Kyle was found, and then kicking the weighted body over the railing in the dark.
Every single detail. The weapon type implicitly matched by the caliber, the fibers explained, the check cashing confirmed, the car mystery solved, the disposal method identical.
It fit like a key in a lock. Gerald's confession accounted for every piece of physical evidence and every confusing aspect of the original case in a way the theory against Susan never could.
It's the complete picture. But did Gerald know about Susan King? Did he know someone else was in prison for his crime?
He did. And this was maybe the most stunning part of his confession. He finished by saying something like, yeah, he got away with it, but the bad thing was that an innocent woman was doing time for it.
He knew Susan was convicted.
He said he knew of her, had maybe met her once, and critically, he specifically mentioned knowing that she had only one leg. He expressed disbelief that the police could have possibly convicted her for that murder, given her condition.
He pointed out the exact physical impossibility that the grand jury was never told about.
Precisely. It was a full confession that not only solved the crime, but explicitly pointed out the wrongful conviction. Detective Morgan knew this was huge.
So Morgan reports this immediately, right? This should free Susan King.
You would think so. Morgan alerted his supervisors, and Detective Harwood, the same detective who reopened the case and got the indictment against Susan, was notified. Harwood traveled to Louisville to interview Richard Gerald himself on May 11th, 2012.
Okay, Harwood interviews the confessor. What happens then?
This is where the story takes another dark, frustrating turn. After Harwood's private interview with Richard Gerald, Gerald suddenly recanted everything.
He took it all back after giving such specific, verifiable details.
Claimed he didn't know anything about the Breeden murder, just completely withdrew the confession he'd given to Detective Morgan.
Why would he do that? Did Harwood pressure him? Did he realize he wasn't getting the deal he wanted for his brother?
We don't know exactly what was said in that room, because Harwood was recording the interview on a digital recorder. Standard procedure.
Okay, so they have the recording of the interview, even if he recanted afterwards.
No. That digital recorder, containing the audio of Harwood's conversation with Gerald, it vanished.
Vanished? What do you mean vanished?
Harwood claimed it magically disappeared, said it was never downloaded onto his computer. The recording, potentially containing evidence about why Gerald recanted, or even further corroboration before the recant, was simply gone. Never surfaced.
A crucial piece of evidence in a wrongful conviction case just disappears while in the possession of the lead detective who secured the original conviction. That sounds incredibly suspicious.
It certainly raised eyebrows. Harwood later described its disappearance as a real mystery, but offered no further explanation.
Unbelievable. So even with the recantation and the missing recording, was Gerald's original confession to Detective Morgan still usable?
Yes, thankfully. Despite the later recant, the initial confession was detailed, corroborated by evidence, and documented by Detective Morgan. It was officially classified as newly discovered evidence.
Which means Susan King finally had a legal pathway to challenge her conviction.
Correct. It opened the door, but it wasn't instant. The legal process takes time. There were hearings, filings. It dragged on.
How long did it take from Gerald's confession to Susan actually getting out?
Nearly 2.5 years after Richard Gerald first confessed to Detective Morgan.
So finally.
Finally, on October 9, 2014, the Spencer Circuit Court officially dismissed all charges against Susan Jean King.
Exonerated. After how long in total?
8 years. 8 years she spent incarcerated, from her arrest following the grand jury indictment until her release.
This case is just such a stark reminder of the dangers of confirmation bias in investigations, isn't it?
It really is. You see how circumstantial evidence can meet the volatile relationship, the debt, the floor holes, even that strange premonition can build a seemingly strong case. But investigators have to rigorously challenge their own theories, especially when major inconsistencies appear.
Like the .22 Magnum versus the .22 Long, that ballistic mismatch should have been a huge red flag, maybe even stop the prosecution right there.
It should have prompted serious questions, at the very least. And omitting Susan's physical disability from the grand jury, that removed the biggest single piece of evidence suggesting she couldn't have done it the way the prosecution claimed.
It's like they had their suspect, Susan, and then made the evidence fit, rather than letting the evidence lead them. Richard Gerald's confession fit all the evidence naturally.
Exactly. His story required no contortions, no ignoring of physics or ballistics. It just worked. It explained everything.
So we have to ask ourselves, how does this happen? How does the system allow someone so vulnerable, someone with such obvious physical limitations for the alleged crime, to become the scapegoat?
It highlights the immense pressure within the system to close cases, especially cold cases. Sometimes, the most likely suspect, based on relationship or proximity, becomes the only suspect, and contradictory evidence gets minimized or lost.
And the thought that lingers, the really unsettling question this case leaves us with, is how often might this happen?
Right. How many other convictions out there are built on similarly flawed foundations? How many people might be sitting in prison because key evidence was ignored, or maybe even disappeared?
Waiting for a chance confession like Richard Gerald's, that might never come. It's a sobering thought about the fallibility of the justice system.
It truly is. Susan King got her freedom back, eventually, but she lost 8 years of her life, a cost that can never really be repaid. And her case serves as a powerful, disturbing echo of what can go wrong.